Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me in your lunch hour. It is a mega pleasure to be here. Thanks, Meg, and all the organizers. I'll be sharing my screen now. I'm not going to ask you if you can see it because I trust the internet now after a year of doing this. And as Meg was saying, I work at Calusa. It's a part of the OVO Group, a company that's trying to focus on decarbonizing the grid. Ask me more at another time, maybe on Twitter or email. But today we're going to be talking about looking at the bigger picture and how service mapping can help you in product discovery. If you're interested in finding out how to explore the system that you're trying to affect or change, this is going to be a good talk for you. Right. So, have you heard about the blind men and the elephant? Me neither. I heard this last week. I read about it. And it's a well-known story about blind men that were touching an elephant and describing what an elephant is like based on what they could touch. So one would say an elephant is like a snake because they were touching the trunk. Someone else would say an elephant is like a rope because they're touching the tail. Someone else was touching unfortunate part, the poopies, and they were saying an elephant is soft and mushy. What this is the opposite of looking at the bigger picture, and it's something that I want you to remember. We don't want to be touching parts of something and being so sure about what it is and making decisions based on that. We want the opposite. We want to think about the whole system, the whole elephant. When I talk about service mapping, I'd like to start by mentioning systems thinking. So systems thinking is going to help you consider the whole elephant maybe. It will help you accept the nonlinearity of, well, life and the context of your users. It's going to help you design deliberately a process, maybe a network, maybe the relationships between entities in your system. And systems thinking is also going to help you download your thinking. I speak to all the amazing product owners and managers I work with, and sometimes things are in their heads, and it's just amazing when we get together and start sketching things out to download that thinking. And it's going to help you have conversations with others by looking at your system map. So this is an example of what it looks like. System thinking is looking at the whole versus the parts, looking at nonlinearity versus linearity, looking at synthesizing complexity rather than analyzing a part of the elephant, as we were talking. It's looking at processes rather than structures, and networks over hierarchies. And finally, looking at relationships between objects rather than the one. It's uncomfortable to look at everything at the same time, but I invite you to consider it. Service mapping or service blueprinting is a type of system map. Here, you don't have to read the detail, but it's just to bring the idea that service blueprinting is really well documented. There's lots of literature, lots of recommended structures for it. You can spend a good afternoon discovering what a good service blueprint is. But today we're going to talk about the practicalities of you making your own service map after this talk. What a service map, or the ones that I make, the service maps that are most useful to me, they show what people do, humans, users, your friends, colleagues, staff members, third parties. It shows business processes, so the unseen behind the scenes that maybe customers don't get to see. And they also show the technical systems, the sometimes limiting IT, the things we cannot change because we've made a deal with an IT company and we can't get rid of them and blah, blah, blah. The technicalities of a system can really bring back a service and limit its potential. By seeing the whole elephant, so to speak, in this type of system map, people can use them to optimize the service. On the left, you see me working with Amy at Calusa. It's a picture of all the services we offer. We started in 2019 and we're still going because you don't just map and forget it. You do it all the time. What it also can help you do is improve the overall experience for users. As I said, you have all the humans. You have the end user, you have your colleagues, and you can look at how they relate to each other in this system. I'd like to make a note to the work that GDS, the Government Digital Services, do and have done to design all the services that you and me use on a daily, maybe monthly, yearly basis with the government. They've looked at their own services with a service design and a service mapping approach. And I don't want it to sound like, oh, you have to be a service designer to do a map. I want to be very clear. Anyone can make a service map. And I want to illustrate my point by meeting Alex. So Alex is a product owner, and their brief is to reduce, or product manager, and their brief is to reduce the amount of customers calling in to leave. He works at a very famous dating app called Flinder that I've invented today. Cool. So on the left, you see what Alex went through with his map. Oop, their map. So Alex made a service map to show the customer actions before, during, and after they would call. He, damn it, they showed what the business does to support those customers. Alex showed the systems underpinning everything. Their discovery outcome showed that customers don't call to leave, actually. When the business, Flinder, sends them a renewal email, customers are confused and they call us to ask questions. They don't like their options and they leave. So the actual problem was different to the one that Alex was pitched in the brief. Alex reduces contact by working with other teams beyond his own to change that renewal email and update training and change the process in which we offer maybe upgrades to people before they leave, improving the overall system. In a parallel world, Alex did not attend this talk, so they did a discovery without a map. Alex does not make a map. They start a discovery. They struggle to keep everyone on the same page because of time and remoteness and life. Alex manages to reduce contact the best they can with the time they have. What decisions did Alex in the world with a map made? Alex decided what scenario to map. So it would be the moment where someone is leaving or calling to leave. They decided what users to include. They wanted to learn the staff that's involved, third-party staff, customers. They wanted to see that. And Alex also wanted to see the processes and systems behind it all. What were the benefits of this? I'm, again, being very clear here. So Alex was able to work with teams beyond their own. Sometimes that's very hard to reach out to another product team and rope them in and explain. And it's just like, what are you talking about? And the day's over. And, I don't have to say more. Another benefit was to have better conversations with product design, engineering, and business stakeholders about the pain points of users, the discovery that they wanted to do, the impact of the changes by having that picture. Alex also gained domain knowledge in a short time because they were new to the organization. So this mapping gave them a really good tool to explore their environment. Alex saw the service provided from the user's point of view, which we sometimes don't do because we're removed from the front-end experience sometimes. They also were able to onboard and brief new joiners very quickly, just like talking to other teams, bringing a new joiner onto the team, explaining what the world looks like. And they also were able to make a future map to show everyone how the service will work in the future after their team made the changes recommended. All of this is because they followed the stages concept. If you take anything from today, please remember the stages concept. This diagram is from a website called Practical Service Blueprinting. Fantastic resource. Remember the theater? Yeah, me neither. So I'll remind you. So you go to a theater and you see actors on stage and it's all perfect and you're taking into a world that's not the one you're in. Amazing. That we'll refer to that as a front stage. It's the same thing as a customer. When they go to the shop, they see everything, the front, what we want them to see, they experience the service. It's beautiful, it's the front stage. The backstage of the theater is where you have technicians, people doing the lights, people doing the music, people opening the curtain. So that will be maybe someone helping you at the customer desk. It could be on the phone, it could be face-to-face in a store. It's backstage and you might even see it. So it might leap into front stage, but it's backstage, it's not front. And then you have mega super behind the scenes, things like paying for the theater rental of the month, the space, selling the tickets online, paying for the lights, all of the things that are super, super behind the scenes. Why am I telling you the stages concept? Because the stages concept is what's going to help you make your map. I want you to think about the users or the people that you're serving with your product. That can go at the front stage. Doesn't matter if you're B2B, doesn't matter if you're B2B2C. You can put whoever you're serving, because hopefully you're helping someone. So you can put those people at the top in your front stage. In Kaluza, for example, we have at least 2 types of users, if not 30. So it is chunky up there. And then you are going to have your backstage. So what business processes and people are there to support your actors, your users in the front. You can interview people who serve customer directly and indirectly and ask them how they do what they do. And then at the end, you have systems. What third-party systems do you use? Your own, a third party that you pay a subscription to. And as I said earlier, systems radically influence, in my experience, how a service works. Understand yours and ask questions, because that might be just the biggest game changer you're going to have in your service. This is a mega quick run through of all the amazing work I've had the pleasure of doing, and where mapping has really helped. To when we were looking to reduce anxiety and blood donors for NHSBT, we mapped that experience of donating blood. So from beginning to end, before someone decides to donate till they've left the building, what happens? And we looked at the donor, the staff, and the systems helping everyone. For Well Pharmacy at the bottom right, my brief was to improve or reimagine the repeat medication service, and our maps helped us reimagine the prescription journey, but we had to understand what it was now and then explore what it could be in the future. We had many versions, current and future. I could go on, maybe Canyon. So Canyon Bikes, the brief was to be more customer centric. The map that we started with was a full customer life cycle. I think you can see customer life cycle a couple of times on this slide. It's a great place to start. No matter where you work, can you try and make one simplified, synthetic, remember the systems thinking we looked at the beginning, a very synthesized view of the services that you provide to your customers. And it doesn't need to be very complicated. I'm going to show you how simple it can be. We're going to do a map in 109 minutes flat. Are you ready? It's going to be fast. Cool. Note, always start with pen and paper. Miro is fantastic, and all of Mural and all of the other online tools, but they really don't stand a chance over pen and paper. Let's do this. So, remember, Alex, please pick a very specific scenario that you want to map. Then with your pen, you can follow along really. With your pen, draw 3 lines. These are going to represent the front stage, backstage, and supporting processes. Label those stages to meet what you need. In my case, it tends to be customer actions, business process, and systems. That's how I always start. And with what you know, fill in your swim lanes. This is a map of a shop. The person enters the shop, someone opens the door, and the door opens. If you can line things up vertically, it's going to help you move in time to the right. Then I'm going to start guessing here, because I assume the person's going to find the till and pay and leave. Guessing is okay, because this map can help you ask questions later. Some things I know, some things I don't know. What I want you to remember from making this map is you can highlight the areas that you're going to focus on that don't work. You can, and I recommend mapping little and often. So this is a 1-minute map, but I probably spent weeks or months doing research, trying to understand each action of the customer, each process. So it's a synthesis. It's the end of a piece of work that has been done already. Towards the end, I also say, don't overthink it. And if possible, map the current first. My video is boycotting me, but I don't think I've left any points out. Nice. So back to Alex. Alex's front stage on Flinder. It was a customer receives a renewal email, reads the options, calls, and leaves. The backstage was the content design team creating that email, maybe the customer service agent picking up, maybe the customer service agent closing the account. You see the backstage is supporting the front stage. Awesome. And Alex then put the behind the scenes, which was maybe the Flinder platform sending out, the comms platform sending out the automated email, and then the Flinder agent platform helping that agent on the phone to see what was going on. If you were Alex, you'd be able on this map to say, you know what, team, we need to find out what's going on here. Let's do some research. We need to find out what's going on over there with that customer call. I need a script, I need to hear it. Let's go in and watch. And let's do some research on why people are closing their accounts. How can we make it better? Then Alex turns around and says, you know what, business, I know you told me to, within my team, fix this, but I think we need to have a systemic approach to improving this reduction of calls, because that's not the problem. Alex turns around and says, we need to change the content of that email because it's confusing and driving people to call because they're confused. Then they also suggest changing the frequently asked questions on the website so that they have somewhere to go other than the phone to help them find their answers. And then they also proposed, and we need to train agents differently because that conversation can be tweaked so people don't end up leaving. I think that's it for less calls. Fantastic book to be recommended is Thinking in Systems by Donella H. Meadows. I'm gonna take a big breath before I read a quote. Okay, here we go. So we can't impose our will on a system. Sorry, guys. But we can listen to what the system tells us and discover how its properties and our values can work together to bring forth something much better than could ever be produced by our will alone. I invite you to think about your system, not just even your service. Think about your product as part of a system, and don't be afraid to map because anyone can do it. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to shut up now.
Thank you so much, Rita. That was awesome. I can personally vouch for how useful like the systems maps are. So yeah, definitely a top tip for anyone to try if you've not tried it before. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat, and I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who's going to run the Q&A for us.
Thanks, Meg, and thank you so much, Rita. Same as Meg, service mapping has changed how I am as a product manager, and it's brilliant. So definitely a big advocate on my side too. Just want to kick off questions around kind of what level of detail do you see is the most impactful? Does that change with your audiences, or what's the most beneficial in your eyes?
Many answers to that, but that's a very common question. You are not making a map for people, you're making a map for yourself and for what you need to do. It's a tool to accomplish your goals. What detail you need will be defined by many specific factors of your own team. I'm going to give you an example. If your stakeholders are not seeing that it's a system that it's bigger than the sum of its parts, don't do too much detail. Show them the world, a very synthesized view of this complex world, so that they see, oh yeah, you're right, actually everything connects. If that's not your challenge, if what you want to do is work with your team and you want to have something on the wall to point at and say, okay, this is happening today, tomorrow we need to work on this, you're going to need detail because people are going to want to look at where, what are they impacting, where do they have to go, what happens tomorrow. I think you have to, it's a very user-centered approach. If you're a designer listening to this, you know what I mean. Just think about who is going to be using this map, what are they going to use it for, and then define your detail.
Makes sense, thank you. We have a question from James. Rita, can you talk us around the altitudes and where to start or end?
Oh, nice, altitudes, nice. So in Calusa, we talk about platform ecosystem design. That's what we are doing. And there's an ecosystem altitude, which looks at the industry. So the energy industry with the sun and the power station and the wind, literally at that level. That's the ecosystem. Then we have several altitudes underneath. The next one is our platform. So how does our platform sit within, how it sits within the ecosystem, but what does it do? Who does it serve? Cool. And then within that platform, a bunch of services. What services does this platform provide? And underneath that service layer, I know I'm going off on one, you have the touch points. So your websites, your pages, your emails, your details. What I'm trying to show you is that you are probably working at all of these levels. Which one's the most useful to start with? Goes back to the previous question. Who are you trying to impact and what change you're trying to make? I would normally start at the service level and just asking, who am I trying to serve right now from where I stand, and start right before the action and finish right after the action. So if it's buying a bagel, start before the person decided to buy a bagel and end right after the person bought the bagel, left the building and went on with their life, and capture that moment. Your scoping is the most important thing you're going to do when service mapping. Everything else, just filling it in and going into it, it's going to be easier than scoping. It's a very complicated question. Could I just ask, I have a fellow service designer in the room that I trust my life to, and I would just like to ask if she has any other thoughts. Anne Napier, fellow designer, I don't know if you can unmute and add anything to
Hello.
that.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. And I think sometimes people see the big pictures that Rita talks about, the sort of end-to-end journey. And everyone tries to attempt that because they think that's the end goal. But I've been working with Sophie on this. And what we found is we're actually best to start at quite a low altitude, sort of getting into the detail, but in a very small sort of scope, as Rita talks about it. And that's a really good way to introduce this sort of service framework. You don't want to make it too big and scare people off, but you want to take your team on that journey with you. So for instance, Sophie's been working with her team and they're learning these domains together and they're working through the problems together. So that would be my advice, is start small and then build yourself up and take your team with you as you do it.
See what I mean? Okay. Thank you, Anne. Amazing. Back to you, Sophie.
So we've got another question from Kate. So once you've got a map or maps, do you have any tips for getting other team members to keep revising and using the map as work goes on? So just not that finalized product, but how do you kind of keep iterating on it?
If you're forcing the map like a ponytail, you shouldn't. You shouldn't force things. So don't force it. You're gonna give yourself a headache. If it's not being used, it's not useful right now. That's number one. Second thing, ponies and compasses. If you need to show pony to showcase your point, make it nice, make it look simple, make it shareable, talk about it, take your pony with you all the time. But what I mean is it's a beautiful representation of your service. I normally do a show pony to showcase to people, and like now, if we were on a meeting at work, I would share my screen and show you something quite easy to understand, simplified. It's my show pony. You're excited, you like it, you want to know more. And then I have my compasses, my navigational monsters that I'll show you, and it'll have so much detail you'll want to leave. But that's the useful bit, because we can go into, oh, okay, I need this for what I'm doing this week. I need this for my planning session next week. That's the stuff that, to the question, you're going to maybe use on a daily basis. If you can, do a show pony for communication so people understand, and your compasses should be used on a daily basis. If they're not used, let it go. It wasn't the right time.
I'll just add to that a little bit as well, Rita, if you
Yes,
don't mind.
please. Yeah, of course.
A question to often to ask is, who's the best person that is there, if you want to keep a map and update it as you go, who's the best person to actually do that? And what we found at the minute is it's the design team, because they seem to be the area that everyone's gravitating towards to update the map and actually physically use it. So I would say that question, who's in the best position to update it? And like Rita says, if you've made a map and it's finished, just let it go and start a new one. That's all right. But a massive thing to take from here is the whole point of it is to help you answer questions. So as long as you've used the map to realize you don't know something, perfect, go and answer that, start a new map after it. So try not to be too precious with them, and go from there.
Awesome, thank you. We've got 5 minutes left, so if anyone has any other questions, I've got another one for myself. So Rita, you mentioned that there's been quite a lot of uptake of service mapping in the public sector, maybe compared to the private sector. What do you think is the main reasons for that uptake, or is it a case that the private sector is maybe a slow starter, or why do we think it started there?
I've had that question on my mind for like at least a year now, because, well, to begin with, it's all the work is confidential most of the time when you do service maps, because it's a blueprint of a business, so you could really copy paste the business, take their secrets and go do another one. So it's unlikely you'll find the case studies on anywhere. So the private sector, I just know that that's where most service designers work. That's the most literature and public figures maybe in service design come from, that their knowledge is just so good, and you can see their work every day. We all use it. So I just think they're a beacon of knowledge in general in the public sector. And I see people here that maybe work or know about the most famous consultancies as well. So service design is well known to be a service that many agencies provide as consultants, to go into a business, look at their service as a whole, and make recommendations. I haven't met myself personally that many service designers working in the private sector. And to be very honest, I don't know why. I really don't know why. I can only speak from my experience. That is that my service design team is about to grow in like right now as I speak. And it's been a very slow approach because it's a journey. It's an emergent practice. It started with an HBR article somewhere in the 80s. Some very smart woman started to talk about services needed in design, and then it started. So it's all very new. So I really struggle to understand what's going on in the private sector. Maybe we just call it UX design, and we haven't really moved on to the. And you have an idea. I can see your face.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with the culture. You've got to have the right culture set up to allow service design to work. Because if you as a product manager realize there's something you haven't learned or you don't know, you have to have the space to go do a bit of discovery around that. And I think you're right, Rita. I think it was one female that actually came into the government and decided to change the culture of how they were going to approach things. So they came in with a user-centered approach and a designery approach, and it just all the design service designers gravitated towards that because they could operate in a world where they got that freedom. I think a big part of it is design education is starting to pick up in it, and that's why it's feeding out into the private sectors more. So over the next few years, we'll see it grow.
Some answers as was coming in the chat. If you have any thoughts, add to the conversation. It does need to be embedded at the top of the organization, James. So trickles down. We have the luck. Yeah, we have the luck of that at Calusa, which it is. Back to you, Sophie. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. I understand it's growing. It's exciting. We've just got a couple of minutes left. Rita, I know you've got lots of resources in your kind of back pocket with service mapping. Are you happy to kind of share on your Twitter or social media, or if there's any? What's your favorite one? Maybe you can leave us with your favorite one.
Oh, that's
too many good ones.
That's a catch. That's a massive catch. Let me think. Let me just think for a second. I think what I'd like you to do after this talk is to look at that Thinking in Systems book, please. Get it, have a scan, watch the video summary, please, 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 please. And to start mapping, please don't look at any resources, just grab pen and paper, like as soon as possible, if you can start sketching. When you strike a question, I'm happy to talk to you on Twitter. I recommend practicalserviceblueprinting.com, I think it is. They have beautiful guides, but you have to start doing it. This is not something that you're going to learn by reading anything. You just have to start. And it's not scary, I promise. Anyone can do it.